So in today's session, the big thing is that when we do webinars, they are a great tool, but sometimes it can get cumbersome trying to manage them, especially if you're doing them weekly or multiple times a week. And I felt that pain. Just so you guys know, like I host this session 3 times a week, and I also do new customer webinars that I do about 10 times a week. And so I've got 13 webinars I do every week. They're recurring. And if I didn't have automation, boy, I would rip my hair out. That'd be too much for me. And so luckily we've got Lisa here. Lisa also does several webinars. And so she's here to help us to be able to see the benefits of our software and how it can help you to automate the process of webinars on the front end and on the back end. Lisa, thanks so much for coming back and joining us again.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
So Lisa, tell me just a little bit about what we're going to be accomplishing today in the session.
Well, this came about because of a client who had multiple webinar registrations. Now, there is on the Zoom website a very simple setup to be able to automate a registration inside Infusionsoft. But to take it slightly to the next level, it doesn't give you instructions on how to do a one-click registration from an existing list. It doesn't tell you how to handle multiple webinar dates or how to kind of nurture people in between. So it's going to be kind of level 2 of the basic setup that some people might already be familiar with, whilst we will cover off the basic setup as well. So by the end of it, you'll be able to automate webinars, the reminders in the lead up to the webinars, even if someone's chosen a different multiple dates, make sure that the right people get the right follow-up and reminders, and also a little bit of the geeky stuff around actually how to configure the nuts and bolts inside Infusionsoft.
Nice. And this session's content, will it work for both Infusionsoft and Keap Pro customers?
Yeah, so it's going to be the same because it's in Campaign Builder. It's going to be the same. There's a couple of bits that are for that will be different in Infusionsoft and Keap, and I'm going to show that. That's mainly just things like creating a custom field. So I'm going to show that in both different types of applications.
Perfect.
And Infusionsoft.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can share yours. All right, there you go.
Okay, can you see the right screen?
I do. I see the campaign builder right now.
You don't want to be seeing the other screen, just saying. So this is this is the pre-set up, and I'm making this available on the marketplace as well, so that you guys will be able to download this framework if you like the look of it once we've been through it. I'm going to take you through kind of in the chronological order that you need to make things happen, in order that you can not spend time having to flip backwards and forwards the whole time between different sets of software. So I put some instructions on the left here as far as what you need to do before you get this far. So of course you need to have your Zoom webinars set up, because you're going to need the unique ID that is for each individual webinar to make sure that people are registering for the right one. You'll need to, within that, which you can get from the Zoom instructions, make sure that they're configured to auto-register. And if you don't want Zoom to send out your mails, but you want it to do from Infusionsoft, then you need to switch that off from inside Zoom. We're going to create a custom field for the webinar join link, as well as creating the date and time field and a thank you page. So that's kind of the foundation to make sure that once you start building the campaign, you've got those elements in place. So I'm going to start by showing you how to set up a custom field, both in Keap and in Infusionsoft. So if you're in Keap, you would go to a contact record, you can see here, here's Grady's, and you would edit it. You can do this from any contact record, and if you go to the bottom, you can see the option to add a custom field. Now, generally across both Keap and Infusionsoft right now, although it will change in about a month, you want to limit, if you don't have to use a custom field, you can do it with tags, you want to do that, because we only have 100, which is about to be increased. So I'm going to add, you can see here, I've created this webinar join link, and all I've done, you can edit it, is you give it a name, and I've given it underscore webinar join link, and I've chosen what kind of field type it is. When you create a custom field, you do have the option of all sorts of different types of fields. Why is it not letting me create that? And the same in Infusionsoft. In Infusionsoft, you would go over to admin and settings, and you would click on here where it says set up custom fields for contact. You click on go, and then you can see here the add field buttons come up. And it's important in Infusionsoft that when you create it, webinar join link, and I'm creating this as a text field, and here you can see all the different types of fields you can create. You want to create a text field that you put it into a tab header, a tab and a header, so it doesn't get orphaned. You'll see sometimes they'll be down the bottom here. It means they've not been put into a section. So do make sure in Infusionsoft you add it to a tab and a header. I saw a question pop up there. Do we need to have a look?
No, I just had to make the Bobby. I was just saying thank you for updating the amount of custom fields we can have. Now, you kind of slid that in there, but that's a huge deal. We've been told for years it can't be done. And Joe Leal, who's the PM over that, was just like, I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways.
Yes, so we're going 200 to 250 custom fields, fingers crossed, by the end of June. That's the word on the street. I know that some apps have already got the extended number of fields, and for those of us that have been in Infusionsoft for a while, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, we're doing some testing right now to see kind of what the system can take. You know, making sure we don't end up with apps slow down with too many fields in there, but yeah, it should be here soon.
Absolutely, super exciting about that. The other field that you want to create, so that's the webinar join link. So that's where it's going to save the actual link that people are going to click on to be able to access your webinar. The other field, if you're doing multiple dates, so you're pushing out an invitation for the same webinar for 3 different dates or different webinars for different dates, you're going to want to create a custom field which is for webinar date, and that's going to be a date field. So whereas the other one was a text field, we want to create that one as a date field so that it can hold the date, because from a field date in Infusionsoft, we can go send this 1 day before or 3 days before, and we can actually automate off the back of the date. I hope that makes sense to everyone. If it doesn't, please raise your hand or add a question, and I will confirm that again for you and make it simpler if necessary. So that's the setting up of the Zoom webinars, the making sure it's configured correctly in Zoom, creating 2 custom fields, one for the webinar join link and one for the actual webinar date itself. And then there's the thank you page, which you'll understand in a minute why you need this. You might have a thank you page on your website already set up, but you're going to need somewhere for people to click through to once they confirm that they're going to join your webinar. If you can't add a page on your website, or it's easier to do it this way, Infusionsoft landing pages, the new ones, are really, really cool for this. So you can build a very simple page. Let me get this menu out of the way. So all I've done here, you can put whatever you want on there as far as your logos, the name of the webinar, and just put, you know, thank you for confirming you'll be at the webinar. Now, something just on the side here for best practice, you may have heard rumors and information that the email service providers are being very strict with their content filters and their engagement and stuff at the moment. So it's a really good idea on all of your thank you pages to put in that they're going to get an email and to go and look for it in the junk. So in a few minutes, you will get an email. Please check your inbox, and if it's in your junk or spam, please flag it. You want to give people instructions. I've been typing too fast for the screen there. There we go. Give people instructions to go look for the email and to find it, and the action of them moving it over from the junk or the spam into the inbox is going to be engagement, and it's going to get you better delivery next time. Do tell people, whether it's a webinar or anything, that this thank you page is, you really want to have that on there all the time. So if I launch that, this link now, this link, if I show you in a new window, is what people are going to see. So I've now got a URL for a thank you page. You obviously pretty it up with pictures of your product or of your logo or whatever you need. So that's a really easy way of creating a thank you page, which we're going to need for the email invitation. So there's two ways that people can automatically register for your webinar. One of them will be a web form. Now, you can use, as always, the web form standalone. You could do this as a landing page in Infusionsoft. You could do this with, embed this into another type of landing page or on your website. Wherever you want to put the web form, you might be driving traffic for a webinar. You might use it on Facebook, wherever. So you can use the web form to capture people's details. And also here, you can have them select if you've got more than one date, and if necessary, if it's applicable to you, you can tag. So I've just given them generic date 1 and date 2 at that point. The other way
I'm actually building this right now. Before we had the session, I'm building a web form that has both date times on there.
Yeah. So, and then what we would do when we come later on is we'll show you how that people can select and be registered for the correct webinar depending on which date they've selected. You might send them an email because it might be to your existing list. So here we have the email, and I've got the 2 buttons for date 1 and date 2. It will just work for date 1 if you want it, but I wanted to show you for multiple dates. And you can see here that as the URL that they click through to, this is the thank you page URL that we just created. So when people click on that, they go through to the thank you page, and we can act on the link click. You could also, if it's relevant, tag people here if that's useful for your segmentation or behavioral actions if you want to. You could also put in a reminder email and repeat that email if you wanted to remind people they missed it, because of course as soon as they click on it, they're going to be pulled forward. So if they've already clicked, they're not going to get the reminder. So has anyone got any questions on that first section or setup? Please raise your hand if you do before we move on to the next section. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on going. So keep on going. So we've got the email.
Oh, we got a hand up. We got a hand.
Oh, we've got a hand.
Yeah. All right, Bobby, let me give you access. Mute your microphone now.
I just wanted to know are they bypassing then if they're registering via Infusionsoft or Keap, are they bypassing the registration in Zoom?
No, that's the very next bit that I'm going to show you, which is these 2 sequences here, which is how they register with Zoom. That's exactly what's coming next. So here,
Bobby, you're like a plant to guess the next topic.
I know you're way ahead of me. You're slow down, girl. So you can see here that we've got 2 click goals. We only want to activate the link click for date 1 for the link click for date 1. And if it's for date 2, then we're selecting the other one to make sure that we feed them into the correct sequence. So this one is only activating if they click button 1, this one for button 2, and then they'll go into relevant sequences. And for the web form to make sure they go, you want to set a decision diamond saying if the form submission option radio date 1 is selected, send them into this sequence. And if button 2 is selected, send them into this sequence. That's how we make sure that they get the right registration for the right webinar. So these 2 are identical apart from one thing, which is which webinar are they registering for. So if you look here, you're going to need this link, zoom.us webinar/register, and then your webinar ID. So do you remember I said at the beginning that you wanted to set up your webinars beforehand? Each webinar has a unique ID. So the link is identical except for the ID that you need for that webinar. So you would pre-fill, and this is what's on the Zoom help page, this HTTP post. So this is always the same, that first half, and then you add in, you overtype that with whatever your webinar ID is. So this is the bit that then pings out to Zoom and goes, this contact, whether it's been taken from a web form or whether it's been taken from the link click, because we already have the details in Infusionsoft, this will send a message to Zoom saying, please register this person for this webinar. Does that make sense? This will not work the other way around. If people register in Zoom, they're not going to come into Infusionsoft. This is a one-way from Infusionsoft to Zoom. Is everybody clear on that? Please raise your hand if you need some more explanation on that, because that's a little bit of a geeky stuff there.
Yeah, because it's a mouthful for one, but HTTP posts definitely can get difficult if you don't have someone like Lisa saying, here's exactly what needs to go in these fields. Anne says it's clear. Mark says this is for a Zoom webinar. Does it work for Zoom rooms or meetings as well?
Well, the Zoom meetings is a separate thing. So the tutorial we've got going today is specifically for webinars. The Zoom rooms thing is a separate thing. So I can cover that off another time for you, but I'm not going to confuse what we're doing today with the Zoom rooms. Is that okay, Mark? So once, thank you, Mark. So once they've registered, this is where we can set the date field. So we set the custom field for date. So we can now pre-fill that for that particular user now that we know. So if they're registering for a webinar today, we can now pre-fill that for anybody that passes through this sequence. It's for the date of date 1. You can pre-fill that for everybody. We're then going to pause for a minute just to allow Zoom and Infusionsoft to communicate with each other. And then we will apply the tag saying they're attending this webinar, they've registered for this webinar, and then send them a registration mail. Now we've got 2 different custom fields that we've created that we're going to include here. One of them is the contact webinar date here to confirm the date that they've registered for, which we've just pre-filled in the sequence before the minute timer. And so that will update automatically for different people on different webinars. And you could also, if you want, include that up here. So you could do confirmation of your registration for webinar, and you could put the date in there. And then that would update automatically. Let's make sure we get accurate fields there. The other thing we need to do is give them the actual join link. So if you can see here, the URL that I've used is actually the custom field, because Zoom is going to have come back and embedded the URL for that registration for that individual person for their unique link, and is going to pre-fill it in that field. So when they click on that link, it's going to take them straight into the webinar. So this is also the point at which we can say that they have now attended, because if they've clicked on the link, they've attended the webinar. So now we know who's joining and who's not joining. Now, I want to give you a little glitch that I discovered yesterday about this. Yes, sorry you missed. Exactly, Cameron. That's exactly why we're doing that. You, again, are one step ahead. Everyone in this group is one step ahead of me today. So one thing I discovered when I was configuring this, I think it was yesterday, was there's a glitch with Gmail inboxes. We isolated it down to Gmail. It wasn't happening with Outlook. It wasn't happening with anyone else, where when they clicked on the button, it's taking them through to Wikipedia. So the way that we got around this was to put the merge field in and make it a link of the merge field, as you can see here, like we did with the button. But what that will do is it will display the whole of their URL. So you can say to them that if the click button above doesn't work, copy and paste this link into your browser, and it's their unique link, because it's linked up to their contact record. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit of a fail-safe for if the email clients or service providers are messing around with our link redirections. So we're making sure people get the information. Is everybody clear on that?
One of the questions we got here is, with one-click registration, how does it work if John Doe is your contact? He clicks the email link to register and forwards it to his employee, Jane Smith, who is not in Infusionsoft. She clicks the link to register. Does it pull Jane's email?
I'm afraid not. It's going to pull in John Doe's details because that's what's embedded into the Infusionsoft code when you send it to a unique person. What you can do, however, is you can put a link to your web form. So back here where we created the registration form, here, you could put an invitation to go, if you'd like to invite friends, family or colleagues to this webinar, please just share this web form, and then they can fill in their details, and then you capture them as a new contact into Infusionsoft as well. You could also be referred by a member of a corporation. Does that help you? Does everyone like that idea? You can expand your list during this process as well. Brilliant.
Yes.
So,
yeah, because there's so much being tracked in an email, when you forward it, that tracking sticks around with the original recipient. And so like I've had it where I have unsubscribed my boss for newsletters. He would forward me. Subscribe on the thing he forwarded, and I never got another one again because my boss got unsubscribed instead of me.
I'm not sure if that's a blessing or not, but okay.
I know. I never said a word about it.
So, as you can see, depending on which link click or which option they choose on the web form, it will divert them into the registration sequences. And as I said, the only difference in the sequence will be which webinar ID you put in here. Now, please be careful not to put in just the webinar link here. You can see it has register in there. I did have a client who went and updated all the URLs to just the Zoom webinar and the ID. It must have the register in there. So that's how people are registering and when they click to join. Now, some people might want to just send out a notification going, you're confirmed, like a thank you page, and then an hour before send the registration link. There is the possibility that if people register a few days early, they might click on the link and you might get a false positive for attendance. So you might want to just think about how that's going to work for you. Obviously, if people register within an hour, you need to take that into account as well. And the timers will allow you, a field timer, to go up to 15 minutes before any given hour. So I'm assuming here that my webinar is going to be at 9 a.m. So I've set this timer here to go wait until the webinar date that we've pre-filled, and I'm doing it at 8 a.m., which is 1 hour before, because my webinar is going to run at 9 a.m. So I want the notification at 8 a.m. So it might be your choice just to put the join link in here. You could also do one at no delay, webinar date at, if I do this at 8:45, then that's going to be 15 minutes before my webinar time. If you're in Infusionsoft and not Keap, you can set a date and time field, which is one custom field which has a date and time option. So you can therefore pinpoint the actual hour of that, but you can't do that in Keap. You can only do date. But in Infusionsoft, you do have a field that can be a date and a time option simultaneously if you want to. So here we have the different times for each of the individual webinars. So each of these different sequences is webinar specific, and you can have as many of those as you want. Just rinse and repeat on your way down and repurpose them as well, not forgetting that each time you have a join link to put in the attendance tag so that you know who clicked on the link to join the webinar. Then, is everybody clear on that I can move on, or is everybody already one step ahead like Cameron, who's on the sorry you missed it and thank you for attending? You can feed everybody into one sequence that will hold them until an hour after your webinar has finished. So if my webinar was at 9 a.m., at 10 a.m. when the webinar is finished or nearly finished, you might want to do 10:30, that's up to you. You hold them at that point, and then you can feed them into a thank you for attending or sorry you missed it. And this is a decision diamond that's going to feed off the tag that we put onto the join link. So on the join link, we've clicked on attended webinar and we've applied that tag. So if they don't have that tag, i.e. doesn't contain, we'll put them into the sorry, you missed the webinar. And either way, you can send the recording or not send the recording at this point as well, or advise them that the recording will be available and that kind of thing. So that takes them all the way through from either clicking on an email to register or choosing on a form, registering for multiple dates, holding them until after the webinar, and then thanking them for attending or not. Now you might also want to do a nurture sequence of just telling them more about you or about your program that isn't webinar specific. So you can also feed people into a sequence down here. Now if I leave, as long as they're not grey and I don't do anything with these decision diamonds, they're going to go into both places. The decision diamond must be green, but if there's no rules, it's going to go into both sequences very happily. And in here, again, you can use the field timers for the webinars in the lead up to the webinar specifically for that person to give them more information about it without having to repeat it for every single webinar. So we've used field timers beautifully there. We pre-filled somebody's details with exactly what their date of their webinar is, and we've got everything completely automated, and it's a set it and forget it. So that's basically it. So I'd love to take any questions that people may have around being able to edit this or modify this specifically for what you're doing.
Yeah, Cameron's got two great questions. He says, near the end of this, which is now, can you demonstrate your workflow for duplicating or reusing for new webinar options and updating recurring sessions?
Okay, so if I wanted to create a new date on here, if I click on this and I hold down the control key and I drag, I have cloned that. So whether it's I'm pushing more people into here and I need another click goal or I can repurpose it, I would just rinse and repeat that way. My business partner goes mad unless I keep everything really nice and tidy. So does that answer your question as far as being able to clone the sequences? The only thing that you need to make sure that you update in here is your webinar registration ID in the HTTP post here. That's the thing that's unique, and your date time field. I always call my sequences by the date time field because I always go in and go, oh my God, which date was that? And I have to keep clicking backwards and forwards. So I try and make sure that I name all of my sequences and my elements. Otherwise I waste a lot of time going backwards and forwards. Does that answer that question for you, Cameron? Yes? Okay.
Yes, thank you, it says.
If it's a recurring webinar, it would be the same registration link, I would imagine. If I'm changing the settings in Zoom to suppress, I'm not sure what that question means, Cameron. You change.
I think it means, like, you know, in Zoom, it has its own emails that will send as reminders how to turn those off. Yes.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, when you're setting up your Zoom webinars at the beginning, you need to configure it to auto-register, and you need to decide there whether you're going to use the Zoom mails or turn them off, which is the option when you create the webinar within Zoom. Is that the question you're asking, Cameron? Yes. Brilliant. It was a lot simpler to go through the campaign once I built it. Does anyone want any clarification on how to configure the campaign, or want me to run through it one more time, element by element, for clarification? Would that be useful to you? Okay.
All right. Oh, we got two hands up. We've got Cameron with a hand up. All right, Cameron, I'm going to give you access to unmute your microphone.
Hello.
Hey, Cameron.
Hi, thank you both. This has been a huge help, and I like that it's so. I know it's not straightforward. It would probably take you a ton of time to build it the first time, but it's it's a beginning to end solution. I really appreciate it. My question 2 questions ago, the one about duplicating. So you would keep this campaign going as long as it's one particular topic that maybe you do weekly or bi-weekly, if I'm understanding correctly, you might keep this campaign running forever, and then when date 1 has passed, you might just repurpose those same, you would just repurpose that same one and drop new dates
Depending
that
on
same,
depending on
to that same one.
and your
And I guess you're also
segmentation.
always updating your web form with new dates and your email with new dates. Like you've got to kind of keep it all tidy in terms of the dates and links and balance, right?
Yeah, and your tags, but because you're
And your tag.
not going to be able to rely on the reporting for the sequences if you've got multiple people for different, if you're updating this date all the time. So it's really important that if you're tagging here, that you put that this was 3rd of June at 5 p.m. PDT, whatever it is, so that you know which webinar specifically people have attended and not attended. So keeping your housekeeping going there to make sure that if you are going to repurpose the sequences, that you're updating the tags correctly and the fields correctly as well. But there's no reason for me why you couldn't repurpose it and rinse and repeat. Otherwise, you just end up with the same thing over and over and everything becomes redundant and not very tidy. Does that make sense, Cameron?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It does make sense. And I think that what I'm understanding too is that if I had a totally different piece of content, like in Grady's example of having automation hours and new customer webinars, he might have like one whole setup of this for one purpose and one for the other. He probably wouldn't cross those two pieces of content, but could keep using the same campaign over and over again for that single piece of content.
Definitely. You could clone this and do it for different topics, absolutely, or different chapters, whatever your subject matter is, for your own housekeeping, absolutely, depending on whether you're doing it weekly or monthly. Grady is clearly off the scale with the number of webinars.
It's yeah. I show people the campaign I used to run them, and they're like, no, I don't want to see that anymore. And there's some cool tricks and some things to think about. Things like, do you intend for the attendees to attend multiple times? Like, is this like an open office hours where people are going to be coming a lot to these? Also think about in your emails, what can you do to streamline that content? Can I just be agnostic and say Tuesday at 5, so it's always relevant, or do I want to put the date in there and the topic because that might be changing a bit? You can use things like campaign merge fields to make that process easier, so you don't have to go to the email a bunch of times to make updates.
Absolutely. Campaign merge fields. I'll show you those in a minute along with this as well. If you've got users who are going to be going to multiple webinars, you also might want to put in here a note that will pre-fill, so attended webinar, which will be webinar specific, and you can put in the merge fields for the webinar dates and such. So that you can then track, you could have a look at anybody's contact record and you'd be able to see the webinars they've attended as well as with their tags as well. I sometimes find that notes can be really useful for that. So as far as campaign merge fields go, this was a revolution to me when I discovered it. Merge fields and campaign links. So this is a merge field that is universal across just this campaign. So if you have the same webinar join link, I don't know what they are. They're Zoom.us webinar. I'm making this link up. Do not copy this, anyone. So let's pretend that is a link, and that's going to be the same link for a recurring webinar all the time. Then you could go and use that in an email. So you can then go and deliver. And if you had it in multiple emails, you could then, we'll get the merge field up. You can see here the campaign fields has now appeared in the bottom of the merge fields, and there it is. That is universal across this campaign. So if I then need to update that link for a new webinar, the emails I don't need to touch. All I need to do is to go into the merge fields here, update this link, and it will update across all of the emails. Merge fields are magic. If you've got, I've had this with campaigns where you've got it in 6 different emails, you can't remember what sequence it's in, and the same with campaign links. They're super, super useful for not having to rinse and repeat things over and over. Thank you for mentioning that, Grady.
Yeah, and I know because I've missed details before in the emails, like, wait, I thought it was at this time, and I'm like, that's on me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you can use these as well for dates. So this week's webinar, and you could just put in here like that, and then
yeah, and your topic and all that stuff.
yeah, and then that just that you can use it in your subject lines, in your copy, and then all you need to do when you go and update the campaign, if you're reusing it, Cameron, is go and update the merge field, and boom, the whole campaign's updated in a nanosecond of the time that you would have ordinarily had to do it if you've gone through each of the sequences.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to that help article on campaign merge fields for you guys, so you guys can review that on your own time. Because I'll send you guys a follow-up email after this session. It looks like Ann and Ginger both said they would benefit from just kind of seeing one more time the process that someone goes through in the campaign.
Okay, so we start with people registering either by a web form, and if you've got multiple dates, I've just used a field snippet here and dragged in a radio button to give me the option 1, date 3, and date 4, because I've already got date 1 and date 2 in there. So here I've just created a radio button. This is not a custom field. This is just unique to this web form as a field snippet. You could do it as a custom field, but then you'd have to behave differently with it. So one of them fields are pre-marked, right, so it's not going to allow me to do it. So that's how I created the radio button. You can have as many of these as you want. You just click on the plus here, and you can just keep on going for as many dates as you need. So that's one way people can join. The other way would be to invite them by email. Come on, Keap.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not me out of the campaign. TikTok. There we go. So the other way is from an email, where we give them a button to click on, which goes through to the thank you page that can either go through to your website, or it can go through to the landing page where we created one inside the campaign. I actually have a campaign in my app which is just thank you pages that I use, you know, thank you for joining the webinar, thank you for this, and I just reuse those links all the time rather than recreate landing pages for each and every campaign if I can create them generically across the app. So here you could also add the registration tag if you wanted. We've got the buttons, and it's literally, I've just copied that button there. So that could be date 3. And then when people click on it, they get the same thank you page. And then the link click for this one would be, you'll edit. That's just going to be for link 3, not for link 2 or link 1, because if I do that, it's going to register people that have wanted date 1 and date 2. It's going to push them into this sequence because that link click goal is connected here. This is just for webinar 2, and this is for webinar 1. And that's how we make sure that they get the webinar link for their unique webinar. Then pushing them through into the registration. So we've already created the webinars in Zoom, and we get the unique ID for that webinar, and we tack it onto the end of this URL. And then that way Zoom knows to pick up the details we've got from either the web form or from the contact record, and to register this person for this webinar. Then we can pre-fill for this particular date if you want to, so it can pre-fill that contact's record with the date, which we can use later on either in their emails, or we can use them in a note on the record. To set the date, we wait a minute just to make sure that all of that gets set into place before we send them the registration mail, which would insert that information. It's going to insert their join link, which has been saved to that custom field that we created, and it can also insert the webinar date from the pre-filled field that we put in just before that mini timer. The other thing I did here was to actually show the link in case people have a problem clicking on the button like I did the other day, and that will actually show the full URL for them to copy and paste into a browser. So from there, when people do click on their join links, you want to tag them as attended, because anyone that hasn't clicked has therefore missed. And you can set the field timer here for an hour before the webinar date, which is the custom field. They get a reminder an hour before or 15 minutes before, whatever it is that's working for you on your schedule, depending on where you are in the world. And they will get their reminders with their links. And then because we're then holding here with, again, the field timer, and then the tag from when they clicked on the link to go, yes, they attended, they clicked, or no, they missed it, they didn't click, will determine which follow-up sequence they went into, and you can deliver recordings or invite them to join into the next webinar because they missed that one. So you can also, as I said, you've got the, if you wanted to do a little educational sequence here in the lead up to the webinar, you can do that as a one for everybody based on the dates of their webinars. So that it, and if they join in 2 days before, then it's going to automatically skip this and it will just go to the next email. It'll go on to the next timer if it's already expired before they hit it. Did that pretty much cover it all okay? Does anyone need clarity on any of the elements?
And I love what you added in there about the idea of doing some education before the webinar. You know, that's sometimes something that we go through on these automation hours as well. People that join these sessions, that they've got a very wide gamut of experience. People that have been with us for years and people that are brand new. And so sometimes that education can have the level set to make sure that the people who are new don't get overwhelmed, the people that are experienced don't get bored.
Yeah, you can tell people what to prepare, what to bring along, what they're going to need, a pen and a paper, or, you know, make sure you've got a cup of tea. You know, or they'll get their mindset right depending on what it is, or the notes from the previous webinar. You can really prepare them for that, and you only have to have one sequence no matter which webinar date they've chosen, because it's basing the timing of the emails on the webinar date for the individual based on the field timer that we created.
Awesome. Well, guys, any other questions today for Lisa about the campaign we've made today, or about that Zoom process of getting that started with Keap and Infusionsoft?
It was that good, Grady.
You got it all nailed down. Unrelated, but Mark wants to know where you were born.
London.
London.
Can you? I've got that funny accent. Mark, where are you from? You knew that. You got it from the accent. Hurrah for London. Thank you, Richard. North London, Mark. North Londoner. Don't go south of the river, me.
North.
Not in the town of the Bow Bells. I'm not a Cockney. Mill Hill, Watford. Yeah, close. About 5 minutes away from there. Very close. He's a Crawley boy, that Peter. Can't be helped. Never mind.
I was going to say, I feel like we got a lot of people that join us from the UK.
Yeah. You recognise the dialect. Well, my ex also lives in Mill Hill, or did. So, Mark, we have that in common. There we go.
Well, awesome, guys. Well, hey, we've got sessions still coming up this week. Tomorrow we'll be talking about some great topics. We've got Renee Badakian coming back and joining us again. And again, we got them scheduled for the rest of the month. So I think we have people scheduled already for our partners. So come back, register if this is your first session. Come and join us and get those benefits. We'll get a follow-up email with you guys with Lisa's contact info and how to reach her. But Lisa, I want to give you a chance to share kind of the last word. What do you want people to do based on what they learned today in the webinar?
Well, look, I'm making this campaign available on the marketplace for people to download into their apps. Mark would like to know more about Zoom Rooms, so I'll reach out to you separately about that. But I want people to automate. I want you to save time, guys. I want you to not be doing the same thing over and over and be pulling your hair out. The thing with Infusionsoft is it's designed for you to be able to clone stuff, copy stuff, and make it as easy as possible. So if it's feeling like it's too difficult, reach out to there's loads of partners on the user groups out there, and we're all here to serve and to help you really unleash the power of Infusionsoft. So I really hope you get going with this. But in this world and where we're at now, there's so much more happening with Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars, and there's a lot of functionality out there. You can get, I did one for someone with group meetings of not more than 6 people, for Zoom meetings using Schedule Once. There's all sorts of stuff we can hook up, and me and the other partners are here to serve.
Awesome. And yes, Anne, we'll make sure that the follow-up email does have the link to the marketplace listing for the campaign. We'll make sure you guys get that. All right. Well, Lisa, thank you again. I really appreciate you, and and all you guys in the UK spending some late nights with us here at Automation Hours. We're glad you're here, and we'll see you again soon.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Danny, just to say Vimeo is, I don't know about Vimeo as a webinar platform. Apologies.
Yeah, mostly Vimeo is, as far as I know, a video recording tool. It's a great place to post your replays. I know that we do use Wistia for our replays. That's how you guys get to see those. In fact, replays are on the registration page too. Matt Vosberg is one of our team members, and he does a great job of usually getting those up the same day. And so those will work in that way. Thanks, guys.